Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hi, you guys. This is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice. Thank you so much for pressing play today. I don't know if you guys know how much it means to me for you to invite me in to your ears. Really. I mean, gosh, thank you. I'm really, really honored to be here with you today. Maybe it's in your car, maybe it's while you're doing dishes, but thank you. Today I have a really, really cool guest, and she is one of my visionary women spotlights. Her name is Heather Thorkelson, and she is so cool. You guys are going to really dig her. And I am really excited to join her in conversation and talking about freedom, in talking about loneliness, in talking about micro ways we can begin to question reality. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that she focuses on and lives in every day, and she really shared her journey with us. But before we get to her interview, which is so good, I want to share with you something that I have coming up. I'm really super excited to be running a live version of my Overcoming Perfectionism course. I have had a sort of do-it-yourself course available for a while, and I've just really felt a pull lately to do more connecting, to do more in-person, not necessarily in-person, but face-to-face things, so online. And I want to run a 3-week program on overcoming perfectionism. So this is just sort of a revamped, one-upped version of what I normally offer. And it is going to include weekly calls with me, group calls with me, and also tons and tons of support and encouragement, and one-on-one coaching call. So this is a great opportunity to hop in, feel what one-on-one coaching feels like, see what kind of progress you can make, what kind of transformations you can make, and really push through the barrier of perfectionism. And I know that it's something that holds so many of us back, including me. And that's why I really love to be sharing the work and doing the work. So if you are really ready to experience more joy in your life, to have more laughter, to have more freedom, to feel like you are more in control of who you are and how you show up in this world, doesn't that sound amazing? Then this is for you. And the time commitment is low, but the heart commitment is high, if that makes any sense. So go over to the link in my show notes and in your podcast app that you're listening to. It's kellycovert.com/perfectionism. All of the details are there. And of course, if you have any questions, you can email me at kelly@kellycovert.com or contact me on any of my social media avenues, I guess you could say. But I am really, really excited to run this. And I think that it's going to be a real way to move forward and to make some transformation. And remember, when you change your world, you are changing the world. Now, back to Heather. Let me read you her bio. She's so cool. Heather Thorkelson is a coach who works with entrepreneurs to grow their impact and visibility while growing their bottom line. She has been location independent for 7 years and runs her businesses from all over the world, including, on occasion, Antarctica. Heather is the founder of the Republic of Freedom, a digital collective aimed at helping people live better outside the matrix, and the owner of Twin Tracks Expeditions, a polar expedition company. I mean, really, how cool is that? Like, yeah, let me think. I think I want to go on a polar expedition. Yeah, I just call Heather. You guys are going to love her. Let's dig into this conversation on freedom and being a rebel and changing your reality. It's so cool. Let's go. Well, hello there, Heather Thorkelson. I'm so glad to have you on In Her Voice.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
You're welcome. And I am declaring right here and now that you are a visionary woman, and I'm excited to spotlight you. And it was so funny because before we started recording, and I said that, you're like, oh, I don't know. You sort of had this moment of like, oh. And so let's start there. What does visionary mean to you? And why do you think it might be hard to put that title onto yourself?
What does it mean? I think, honestly, a visionary is someone who both leads by example and also someone who is willing to look for the possibility in everything, rather than the just sort of staying within the box, or as I like to say, within the matrix, with the known things. So someone who can look beyond those walls, I think, is a visionary. And I don't know that I'd call myself a visionary just yet, but I certainly feel on the path, very much on the path of doing things very differently from my peers and from other people. So that's kind of exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I hope that it's okay that I call you that, because that's definitely what I see and feel in your energy. And, you do a lot of really different things. You own a couple of businesses, and I feel like, okay, so we'll just do a quick rundown. You, have a coaching business where you work with entrepreneurs. You have a community called the Republic of Freedom, where you're really encouraging and inspiring and teaching people to, like you say, live outside the box, live outside the matrix. And then you also have a polar expedition company.
Yep.
And when I put all of those three things together, and I'm sure that there's even more, what I feel is this. First of all, like, you're my people, because I so get, feeling like there's so many things for me to explore and so many different aspects to who I am. So I love that. And I feel like sometimes I am overwhelming to other people because of all of the things that I love doing. So when I see someone else like that, I'm like, ooh, I want to like pick their brain and figure it all out. But my question to you is this, and it may be a hard one to answer, and that's totally fine. What is your favorite part of you?
Oh, my favorite part of me is that I to be honest, I do what I want.
I love that.
I really love that I do what I want. And I often do things that people tell me can't be done or aren't reasonable or whatever. And I don't care. I do what I want. I trust my instincts. And they haven't led me astray yet. Not wildly anyways.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about your instincts. How do you feel like you developed trust in those instincts? I mean, how do you connect with them? How do you really tap into that when everyone around you is saying, you're crazy, Heather? What are you thinking?
Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting thing, but also something that I didn't necessarily choose. I had a really strange upbringing where my parents divorced when I was really young. I was 10 years old at the time, and my dad got full custody of the kids, of us, and I didn't see my mom anymore for almost a decade. And during that time that I lived with my dad, if there's one word I could use to describe it, it would be neglect. Like, we had somebody who basically made sure that there was a roof over us and that there was food in our mouths, but there was no parenting, there was no taking care, there was no direction, there was no nothing from the age of 10 for me. And when I was 14, he moved us to Costa Rica, myself and my little sister, and then often left us there by ourselves because he was an airline pilot, so he was gone for long swaths of time. And I just had to kind of take care of myself. So, and I'm an introvert. Like, I'm a very extroverted introvert, but I had...
That's exactly what I call myself too, an extroverted introvert. I get that.
I think there's a lot of us, especially multi-passionate people, So I was like extremely socially anxious and living in another country where I didn't speak the language and having to get myself to school every day, all the while knowing I was completely cut off from everybody who loved me. This is pre-internet. There was no, like, I didn't have any, but I didn't even have an emergency number in the house if my dad was like in China for work and I, chopped my leg off by accident or something. Like, there was no safety net. And so being there and dealing with all this like extreme anxiety and stuff made me sort of like fortified without my choice, like I was in a bad place for most of my teens. I was very lonely. I was trying to get by, and I was really motivated to do well because I had my cousin lived in my house when I was quite a bit younger, an older cousin who was really good at school. And he always said to me, Heather, no matter what happens, just make sure you do really well in school because that will open up the doors for you in the future and then you'll be free. And I was like, okay, cool, done. And I've always been like kind of a nerd. Like, I like school, I like studying, and I'm good at it. So I just really put my head down and focus on studying and what I feel like is staying alive, like it was a bleak time. And so then when I got into by the time I like sort of left home at 17 and, got into my 20s and stuff, I had already sort of survived, let's say, through a lot of things that most people my age at the time couldn't even fathom, like everybody that I knew had at least one loving person who cared about them that they could call in a pickle. And I had just been through 10 years of zero of that. And so I was really like, had an incredible level of self-knowledge and self-dependence, if that makes sense. Like, I could depend on myself because there was nobody else. And that led me through my 20s, like this sort of process of searching, doing different jobs, trying to get myself some financial footing, and all that kind of thing. Because again, no safety net, no parents, nothing. And like after I left home, I stopped talking to my dad because he was a horrible man. And yeah, it was weird. And so this whole process of like me getting to know myself, the inception was ultimately sort of a situation that I would have never chosen,
Right.
And that put me on a path to sort of, it put me on a path that I never really escaped from. Because after that, I thought, holy crap, I never want to feel trapped again. I never want to feel like someone else is deciding for me. I never want to feel like I can't do the things that allow me to thrive. And that's what guided me in the future with my job decisions, with my decision to become an entrepreneur, and also with the continuing and regular and ongoing decision to always default to asking myself what's best for me first before making any decision.
And I think if more of us started doing that, even though I think a lot of people would say, oh, well, that's selfish. No. No. If we really started asking ourselves that, we would be so much more full of joy. We would be really living a life that excites us, that, we're excited to get up and go every day. And, I think our outlook would be different than if we put everyone else before us all of the time. Don't you think?
I could not agree more. And I think I'm very unusual in the sense that, women tend to be painted in that sort of caregiver light, and you're always putting people before you and stuff. But I never had that because I had no choice but to take care of myself. And I didn't have anyone around me to worry about or to take care of. And so I kind of grew, like, I'm very non-maternal. I'm like really an individualist, and so I've never felt that feeling of like, oh, I've got to put everyone before me. I'm like, no. What do I need to get through this day first? And then we'll talk about how we can take care of everyone else, and I think that's actually been incredibly useful for me. It's that whole like really cheesy airplane, put your oxygen mask on first before you put your kids on. I think that's a critical life skill to develop, actually, and make sure that you're taken care of. And I don't mean like that you have enough time to go to the spa and take care of yourself first. It's like, no, it's deeper than that. What are the basic psychological requirements that put you in a good headspace so that you can serve others from there?
Well, so let's talk about what that looks like for you. Like, what are your non-negotiable ways that you have to take care of yourself? Like, what are I call them my critical forms of self-care. Like, I have to have them every day or I'm kind of a hot mess.
Yeah. I need a lot of alone time. like a lot.
Me too. And it's so funny because I just thought everybody was like that. Mm-hmm. You know how like when it's just how you are, you just think that everyone's like that. And I have a friend who is an extreme extrovert.
Yeah.
And she can't stand being alone at all. And I'm like, that's all I ever want.
Yeah.
You know, like I when my kids leave to go to school in the morning and I have like 2 hours of time before I have to like talk to anybody or be with anybody or go anywhere, I'm like, that's the best part of my day.
Yeah, it's so critical. Like I would say that's probably the most important thing. Sleep is really important to me as well. But alone time, solo time is so critical. And actually, I don't have kids yet. And one of the reasons I don't have kids is because the idea of not having alone time terrifies me. You know, it's a major hurdle for me. So that's kind of the critical thing. I'm a very simple person. I've moved over 30 times. I've lived in 7 countries outside of Canada since I was 14. I'm 39 now. And I don't own much. I have stuff that I love, and I have things like yarn because I love knitting. I'm a knitting nerd. But I only kind of own the things that I need for this stage in my life. So this stage of living in Sweden, you know, I actually live in the middle of nowhere. My husband, who's a Coast Guard, he's always like, "Are you going to be okay at home alone? Like, we live in the boonies." And I'm like, I love it. Go away. I'll see you in a week.
Yeah.
So it's mostly just that. It's the alone time. It's the eating well, sleeping well, getting fresh air. It's very simple, you know, and the alone time is partially to do work that I love, but also to have reflection.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Okay. So, I want to go back to sort of the story of how you were brought up. And, you know, you are incredibly resilient, that you've been able to take what really was like a nightmare and turn it into something that has been so strengthening and so life defining for you in a positive way. And I really love that. I love that. I mean, and if only we could do that with all of those circumstances. I mean, I think that's what we're called to do, because we can't change the past, right?
No.
We can only look at it and say, what will I take from this?
Yeah.
But one thing I wonder is you were forced to be so independent at a young age to really figure out how to survive on your own. Mm-hmm. How have you learned how to ask for help? Because I think that's essential.
Oh, Kelly, I'm terrible at it.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at it. I'm trying hard. I've only really started asking for help in more recent years, in my late 30s. Like, it's taken me that long, you know, because I was so used to being independent, and I was so conditioned to just take care of me all the time. And I also had learned, essentially, that don't bother asking for help because you're not going to get it, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was a real struggle. And my whole 30s have kind of been an unfolding, and kind of to your point about, you know, figuring out how to sort of listen to myself. I think there's a piece of the story in there I think that's really relevant there, which is when I was working, I had a corporate job for many years, and I left it when I was 32. So that was 2010. So I left this job, and luckily I got a payout because they downsized. And so they downsized me out. I was very happy about that because I was ready to not work for anyone else anymore. I had sort of gotten myself financially stable, and I wanted to work for myself. And so the thing is that I had no idea what made me happy. You know, like, I had no idea what I wanted, how I wanted to spend my days, other than not being inside anyone else's cage. And so I spent a whole year not working. And of course, I was living in Toronto at the time. It's a very expensive city. I owned a very expensive home. And everyone was like, "What's wrong with you? How can you not work?" And I was like, how could I work? If I went and just got another job for the sake of having a job, I would just be wasting all these hours of my life because it seemed like I should have a job, when actually I had the means to live for a while without the stress and figure out who the hell I was, you know? And so, like, for that time, for that year, I did all the things that I had always wanted to do, but I had never had time before. So I took a knitting class. I took a sewing class. I started taking my dog to the park every day and literally like sitting in the grass with my dog for 2 or 3 hours and like listening to podcasts or just thinking and just calming all of the noise. I would go for these long walks where I would just stare at other people's flower gardens and like freak out the neighbors. And because when I left my job, which I never liked it. It was very corporate-y and not me. I had dumbed down so many of my senses that I realized after a while that, as I started to kind of relax into myself, that things like colors started to seem really much more vibrant and whatnot,
Interesting.
So it was like, wow, that whole year was me getting back in touch with me. And I realized what a luxury that is. Most people don't have a year to sit around navel gazing, like that was an extreme luxury. But that started off the next process of my evolution that took me through my 30s. So I was 32 then. I had been in a relationship for a really long time that then ended when I was 35 after a 10-year long relationship. I mean, we had a house, we had a dog, we moved to Peru together. It was a big deal. And I realized that in that whole 10-year relationship, that it was like me putting my toes in the water of asking for help and not getting anything back. And so I had my conditioning of don't bother to ask for help because you're not going to get it continued because of these patterns that I was recycling in my life. And then when I was 35, I met my husband, my Swedish husband, which is why I live in Sweden now. And that was a huge turning point for me. Like meeting him and him meeting me where I was at changed everything about the way that I operate in the world, because meeting him was the first time that I felt like another human being could actually help me and unburden me from all the weight that I had been carrying. So the past 4 years that I've known him, I've been a little bit dipping my toes in the water of asking for help and asking for help and asking for help and asking for more connection, purposefully connecting with some of my close friends that live really far away, purposefully plugging into my husband's family because I've never been a part of a family before like this. Mm-hmm. And it's I'm right in the middle of it.
Yeah. I bet that's sometimes overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. It is. I feel like an alien, and I probably always will, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Well, I just want to acknowledge the courage that it takes to change those patterns. I mean, and that's really why I wanted to ask you that question, because I think asking for help is hard for a lot of women who pride themselves in being independent and being able to do it all and being able to take care of themselves. And I think there's almost a shame, I shouldn't have to ask for help. I should be able to figure this out on my own. And I think that there's a lot of freedom in finding the place where we feel safe enough to ask for help, to be vulnerable and to say, I could really use you right now.
Yes, it's very true. And there's also an interesting piece to that puzzle, which is when you're so used to doing everything by yourself, you often don't see how the person offering help can help you. So my husband always asks me hey, can I help you out with this? Or what can I do to help you out today? And my friends as well, some of the people I'm involved in, business friends who see that I'm growing some project and they're like, hey, count me in if you need anyone. And I don't know what to ask them for help with. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm so conditioned to doing it all myself. And so I think that's the other side of the coin. There's we don't know how to ask for help. And then when people offer us help, we don't know how to give them the opportunity to help us, even if we need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how are you teaching yourself that? I mean, how do you open yourself up to, it's almost like learning a new language, right?
Yeah. 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 I stopped dismissing people. So when my husband says to me, because I work from home, and when he's off from work, he's not working. He's a Coast Guard. So it's like a firefighter schedule. When he's home, he's home, he's just hanging out. And so he sees that I'm busy. I'm running 2 businesses. And he's like, hey, what can I do for you today? And I used to just say, oh, it's nothing. It's cool. You can cook tonight kind of thing, But I stopped being so dismissive and I started really thinking, hang on a second, what would actually be really helpful for me right now? What am I assuming I'm going to have to take care of? But I could just as easily delegate it to him or ask him to take care of it, whatever. And same with like my business. You know, I have a virtual assistant and I have some business friends who are kind of like in my sphere. And they're really, one in particular, my friend Lynn, she's like, Heather, make sure if you got too much on your plate, just send some stuff my way. And I'm telling myself, I'm like conscientiously stopping and thinking and going, yeah, okay, right. What could Lynn do? Because this will be useful for me. And to be quite honest, if I want to continue to be the entrepreneur that I'm growing into and grow my businesses the way that I want, I have to get much better at doing that. You know, like I have to get much better at pushing stuff off my plate. I mean, I don't do everything myself, that's for sure. I've had a VA since like 2012, but I still do too much.
Yeah. You know, I read a great book. I think the author's name is Greg McCallen or something like that, called Essentialism. Oh. And he talks about this idea of working primarily in your zone of genius. Yeah. So like, you know, I think sometimes we feel that way. We're so good at a million things, right? Especially we talk about being multi-passionate. You know, I can do anything that I want to do. But there are some things that I'm really, really good at. And there are other things that I can do, but that's not my zone of genius. So recognizing those areas can be so powerful because I can give, you know, for example, my tax stuff to someone who that's their zone of genius. Yeah. And then I can put my energy into the podcast, into coaching, into being a mom, into the things that are my zone of genius. And that's going to be most empowering. And I think that's where we find the most freedom.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. And I also think that when you're a multi-passionate person and when you have some interesting things, projects, businesses, whatever going on, the busy work that you can do, even if you shouldn't be doing it, is an excellent form of procrastination.
Oh my
gosh,
I
think a lot of people, you know, they hold off on delegating because they're like, there's all these excuses, right? They're like, oh, but I could just as easily do it and I'll probably do it faster and then I don't have to explain to them how to do it and then I don't have to pay someone else to do it and da-da-da-da-da. And you have this stupid hamster wheel in your head, you know, when actually you should just bloody well not do it. End of story. Like move on to your genius work. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah. Well, so I get the idea, I get the impression that freedom is a really important aspect of your life. Yep. And I would like to know what freedom means to you.
Freedom to me in the context of who I am and the society that I live in is just the ability to make the choices I need to make in order to thrive in this life. You know, like nobody can get in my way. And if there are things that could get in my way, the likelihood of me being able to remove those barriers is quite high. And that's like, that privilege is never lost on me, but it's really critical. I mean, I've chosen so many things in life to create the conditions for myself to thrive. Many unpopular things, many things that people said, you can never do that. And like I said earlier in the podcast, I just like to do what I want to do anyways. Well, okay, if someone tells me no, I'm more likely to do it.
So do you consider yourself to be a rebel?
Not really. Like I think I'm somebody who doesn't care for social norms, but I don't think that I'm a rebel because when I think of rebels, I think of people who are like purposely kind of going against the grain and like, I'm going to be different and like whatever. And I'm not trying to be different. I'm just trying to always stay true to myself and not ever fall into the societal patterns that other people are expecting of me.
I just want to say that again. You stay true to yourself and try not to fall into the patterns of what other people are expecting of you.
Exactly.
So powerful because I think we every single person who is listening to this, I'm sure can tell a story of when they changed themselves or when they did something different, when they did something that they didn't want to do, they went against their inner wisdom because they thought it's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And when we do that, essentially we're cutting off our freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
We're saying to ourselves, no, you aren't worthy of having what you want, even if it's crazy or weird or out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And I just want to applaud you for being able to do that, because it's hard. It's hard to go against what people expect you to do. How do you find the strength to push through that?
Well, again, I think I'm at a bit of an advantage. Like, it's a very strange thing that I got dealt this really sort of short end of the stick in my early life and in the sort of family that I was born into. But at the same time, there are like all these amazing things that happened as a result. And one of them is that I was so sort of removed from quote unquote normal society through all of my formative years that I never really felt much of that pressure to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
And so because I'm an introvert, I don't hang out with any social groups. Before I lived in Sweden, I was living in Peru. I don't have a single friend in Sweden. Like, I'm not because I don't like friends, but because I have friends. I just don't feel the need to go out and make friends here. I've got my extended family, I've got other people, whatever. And in Peru, I lived in Peru for 2.5 years. I don't have a single friend from Peru because my friends were more on an international scale, and I travel all the time. So I get to see them here and there and whatever. But I don't have any like social group that I'm a part of that has that I've had to break free from per se, or that I've had to justify myself to. If anything, it's been to some degree my own family members that I'm back in contact with now. But they're so used to me doing my own thing that they don't really care much anymore, or they're more accepting of the way that I live. Mm-hmm. And I did used to have friends from when I was young that, like, pre-parents divorce kind of stage of my life. I had ongoing friends from that time. But after the advent of Facebook, I realized really quickly how toxic those friendships were. And it was partially because of the fact that they lived in this world that I couldn't connect to. And when they looked at my world, all they wanted to do is pull me back into their box. And I was like, this ain't gonna work, ladies. I'm like, I'm just not on the same, we're not speaking the same language.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think this kind of goes with another question I had. Not all of us have had the luxury of taking a year off of work and like taking 2-hour walks to admire gardens, and not all of us have been brought up like disconnected from sort of like social norms, which I think is super interesting, by the way, and kind of like, it's just fascinating to me. So how do you in your work teach people who have had a more traditional experience and who have who feel that they don't have the option to quit their job right now? How do you teach them how to start breaking out of the matrix? That's what you call it.
Yeah. Well, when I first started my coaching practice in 2011, that was my main focus, was helping people who were sort of stuck inside a box or a cage or the matrix and felt that there was a real incongruence there. Like, I don't want to break people free from any cage if they're happy in their cage or they don't see it as a cage, Like, I am only here to help people who are craving the change, right? And they're craving something different and they're craving to break free. So I initially started working with those people. And to be honest, after a couple of years with that focus, I couldn't handle it anymore. And it's because I don't think I'm the right person to help people make that shift. I started blogging a lot on the Republic of Freedom about little micro ways in which you can challenge yourself, in which you can question your reality, little ways that helped empower people to break free with tiny little baby steps, because there's no one way to do it. It's a practice. It's every day choosing yourself. It's every day choosing the conditions for you to thrive. And so I realized, like, the one-on-one work with people, or even group courses that I ran, it was too draining for me, because it was like I was so far on the other side of where they were at that I couldn't, like, trying to bridge that gap was like pulling teeth for me, right? Trying to help people understand how to get across this massive bridge to the headspace where I was just too much of a leap. And so I slowly shifted more and more. And now I pretty much exclusively work with people who are closer to my end of the spectrum. So people who are still kind of struggling with, being stuck into sort of societal pressures and stuff like that. But they're they've tested the waters. They're confident. They see what's possible for them. They're excited about that. And they want someone to hold their hand to step into that zone of possibility. And so I rebranded, I separated my coaching. Like before, my coaching practice was related specifically to Republic of Freedom. And the idea was you can create your own world. You can create the conditions for you to thrive. That is your Republic of Freedom. It can look like anything, anything you want. It doesn't have to look like my Republic. It doesn't have to look like his. It's yours. And now my coaching is centered around this concept of ordinary, extraordinary, which is the idea that you can do extraordinary things with your life, and you just as an ordinary person, like people who do exceptional things or run exceptional businesses or live really wonderful lives, they're not special. They're ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And so this is the end of the spectrum where I kind of exist with my coaching and my consulting now. And it is super powerful.
I love that because I really believe that. I mean, what I truly believe is that we're all extraordinary, whether or not we acknowledge that or not. I mean, we have that potential inside of us. And sometimes it's just really about owning it and saying, like I can change the world. That's what makes you a visionary. That's what makes all of us a visionary, is that we can do that. And when we start to see it and we start to step into that and we start to take, like you say, these micro steps to question what we want, to put ourselves first, to really make ourselves a priority and say, no, this is how I want to live my life, that makes us visionary. And when we really start to put that energy into serving others, that's when we change the world. And so I just love how you put that. You know, anybody can do something extraordinary. It just takes seeing that possibility.
Absolutely.
Oh, so good. So good. So, Heather, why don't you share with my audience how they can connect with you, how they can learn more about your coaching? Because I do believe that we have a lot of women who are listening to this who acknowledge that they're ready for something more.
Yes. Well, you can go to heatherthorkelson.com. That's my coaching website, and find out a bit more about me and how I operate there. If you want to kind of delve into the history and the sort of the smaller baby steps and the inspirational stuff that brought me and, you know, my sort of coaching clients to where we are today, republicoffreedom.com is a great resource. I've turned it into a collective, so we have a few different contributors, and there's a lot of really powerful, really thought-provoking stuff there. So that's a good place to kind of start. But heatherthorkelson.com is my coaching practice. And that's the main place you can find out more about my work.
Perfect. Okay, so I have one question that I ask all my guests, and it's your turn.
Okay.
So in your life right now, what is your inner voice, your guiding intuition telling you?
My guiding intuition is telling me that the next major wave of my evolution is about to crack open as a business owner.
Yeah. Are you nervous about that? Are you excited about that? Like, what are the feelings that you feel when your inner voice says that?
I'm so excited about it, Kelly. It's insane. Like, it's nuts. And I'm going to tell you a really, really short story in relation to this.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, when I was about 11, and I was in one of the really darkest times of my life, like my mom was gone and my family was very broken up and my house was a very inhospitable place to be. I sat in my closet because there was a light inside my closet. It was the middle of the night. I went in there, turned on the light, and sat down with my journal. And I was like, I wrote in my journal, you have to push through this. You have to push through this, because one day you're going to be someone who other people look up to, and your light is going to shine so bright. And it was also in that time, 11, 12, 13 years old, that I suddenly got this really weird, like, download that around the age of 41 is when I was really going to hit my stride with everything. And I'm 39 now. And it's funny because when I look at the evolution of my business, and then I opened the Polar Expedition Company in 2015, and that's been growing like gangbusters, the way that I'm trending right now in both of those companies means that at the age of 41, it is going to be kind of supernova. So I'm so excited about it. And I feel like younger me knew this.
Oh, I'm sure she did. I have no doubt. And when you said that, I got goosebumps.
It's spooky, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think it's just a testament to how powerful our inner voice is. It knows. It knows. And when we really start to trust it and we really start to set the time aside to connect, to listen, and to act on what it's telling us, it really will be transformational.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Heather, I just want to acknowledge your strength and your resilience. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So powerful. And I want to honor you as a visionary woman. I see that in you. I feel that energy in you. And I hope that you can hold on to that crown and wear it proudly as you move into this next era of supernova Heather Thorkelson.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. That is really, really wonderful. And I really appreciate your words a lot.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
How amazing is that? I mean, really, let's change our reality. Step into the zone of possibility. I loved that. And you know, what I also loved is even Heather admitted that it was a luxury for her to step out of her regular life. And not all of us are afforded that luxury, but that doesn't mean that we can't take these tiny steps or micro ways to question reality. And I think that's as simple as really evaluating what's important to you, evaluating what your core values are. How do you want to feel every day? And how you can do that, how you are in charge of how you feel. And so you can create those feelings through your actions, through your thoughts, through the intentions of your life. It's really, really good stuff. And I just encourage you guys to really sit with this and see how you can apply these lessons in your own life. See how you can take this visionary view of what reality is. And maybe you're not ready to leave your job and move to Antarctica, but you can take small steps to create the reality that you want, to create the reality that you most desire. And I think a big part of this is starting to set down all of the shoulds, all of the ways we think we have to be, all of the ways that we try to be perfect, all of the ways that we try to please other people, right? And these are all big symptoms of being a perfectionist. And I know this as a recovering perfectionist in true, transparent vulnerability. It's a struggle sometimes, but I know that when you're doing the work, that it can shift, it can change, and you can start to see freedom beyond the chains of perfectionism. I totally 100% believe that. I have seen it in my own life. And in my course on overcoming perfectionism that is coming up, you will really get a chance to put these practices into action. This is a journaling-based course, but you're going to have that live support from me in a group call, in one-on-one call, and also in sort of that day-to-day contact. In fact, I'm even experimenting with a Voxer group, which I'm really excited about. And that's going to be something that's going to be a part of this course as well. So if this sounds like it's calling to you, listen to your inner voice, pick up your phone, go to your podcast app, and click on that link, kellycovert.com/perfectionism, and check it out. And if it's for you, sign up. And I know that you will not regret it. And I'm excited to welcome you into the group. As always, I want you to remember that you matter. Your vision matters. It does. No matter how big or small you think that it is, we need you living into that vision, breathing into that vision, making that vision a reality. Because if it is inside of you, that is what you were put here to to do. You are worthy.